What if a man existed who could not be killed? Not by a spear, not by fire, not by an army of 10,000. And the terrifying part, he didn't just survive. He became something else entirely. According to oral traditions preserved across West and Central Africa for centuries, there are stories of certain men and women who were not simply born. They were forged. Beings the elders called Stone Kings. Rulers who, it is believed, entered into a covenant with the earth itself, with the ancient spirits that live inside rock, iron, and fire. And when that covenant was sealed, no weapon made of human hands could touch them. Today, we tell the story of one such man. A king whose name the elders still speak in whispers. A man the battlefield called impossible. His name was Zorath. And this is where history gets strange. To understand Zorath, you first have to understand the world he was born into. Picture it. A vast savanna kingdom in the heart of ancient Africa. Rolling iron-red hills. Dense forest borders. Rivers that flooded every year like clockwork, bringing life to the soil. It is believed this kingdom, which oral traditions call the Kingdom of Ìpàdé, meaning the meeting place, sat at the crossroads of three powerful trading routes. Which meant it was rich. Which meant it was a target. The people of Ìpàdé were not a warring people by nature. They were builders, traders, diviners, deeply tied to the earth spirits they called the Ogiri. Ancient forces believed to live inside stone formations, iron deposits, and the roots of the oldest trees. The elders taught that the Ogiri did not speak to everyone. They chose. And the person they chose was always marked from birth. Zorath was born, according to these traditions, during a night when the dry harmattan wind suddenly stopped. Completely. Not a breath of air. Every flame in the village froze perfectly still. And then from somewhere deep in the iron hills to the east came a sound. Not thunder. Not an animal. A low, resonant hum. Like the earth itself was clearing its throat. The midwife reportedly looked at the elder beside her and said only this: "The ground knows his name." As a child, Zorath was ordinary in almost every way. He ran. He played. He laughed. But there were details. It is said that when other children scraped their knees on stone, they bled red like everyone else. When Zorath scraped his knee on stone, the stone cracked. The elders noted it without explanation and watched him carefully. By the time he was 12, the story goes, he had survived 3 things no child should have. A cobra bite to the ankle, with no swelling, no fever, no death. A fall from a cliff into a dry riverbed. He walked back up, dusted himself off, and asked what was for supper. And a fire. A grain store fire that trapped him inside for what witnesses said was nearly half an hour. When the walls finally gave way and the villagers rushed forward expecting ash and tragedy, Zorath walked out. Coughing, yes. Eyes red from the smoke. But not burned. Not one mark on his skin. The oldest elder in the village, a woman reportedly so ancient she had stopped counting her own years, walked up to the boy, looked at his unmarked hands, and said, "The Ogiri have already decided. This one belongs to the stone." But here is where the story shifts. Because according to the oral tradition, being chosen by the Ogiri was not a gift. It was a negotiation. And the terms were severe. When Zorath came of age, around 16, by most accounts, the elders brought him to a place deep in the iron hills called Arapita, the House of Rock. It is described in the tradition as a natural chamber inside a hillside, walls of pure compressed iron ore. No light source. No water, just silence and stone. He was sent in alone. With nothing. No food, no weapon. No fire. He was told to sit, and wait. And listen. Most young men who entered Arapita came out within a day, pale and shaking, saying they had things in the dark they could not describe. Zorath stayed inside for 7 days. 7 days. When he emerged on the 8th morning, the elders who waited outside said his eyes had changed. Not in color. Not in shape. but in weight. Like something had moved behind them. Something old. Something that had been sleeping inside the stone for a very long time. He never fully explained what happened in that chamber. He said only this. We made an agreement. I carry their weight. They carry my wounds. What happened next would shake an entire kingdom. Within 3 years, Zorath became king. Not through inheritance, his family held no royal blood. He became king the way some men always do in the oldest stories. Because no one else could hold the kingdom together. Ìpàdé was fracturing. Neighboring kingdoms were pushing in from 3 sides. The old king had died without a clear heir. Generals were arguing. Alliances were crumbling. And then Zorath stood up in the middle of the royal assembly, walked to the center of the floor, and said 11 words. The stone knows this kingdom. I will be its spine. The elders looked at each other, and no one argued. As a military leader, Zorath became legendary for something that terrified even his own soldiers. He walked into battle first. Every time. No armor. No shield. Just the man. And what witnesses describe, and admittedly these are oral accounts filtered across centuries, is something that should not be possible. Arrows that struck him fell to the ground bent. Swords that found him left no mark. One account describes an enemy warrior driving an iron-tipped spear directly into Zorath's chest with both hands and full force. And the spear tip shattered. The warrior ran. And Zorath stood there, looked down at the broken shaft, and reportedly said, Iron knows its family. But the elders were always clear about one thing. The covenant had terms. And Zorath paid them. It is said he could no longer eat meat. The Ogiri, being spirits of stone and earth, were offended by the death of animals. He reportedly slept on bare rock, never on cloth or animal hide. He could not cross running water without what the tradition describes as physical pain, as if something inside him resisted the flow. And perhaps most hauntingly, he could not love. Not in the ordinary way. Any person Zorath held deep affection for, it is alleged, was slowly drained of something. A vitality. A warmth. As if the Ogiri poured life inward, towards stone and stillness, and those closest to the king were caught in that pour. He had no wife. No children. By choice or by covenant. The elders say he wept about this only once, to his closest advisor, a woman named Aurora. He said, The stone does not know how to be lonely. But I still do. That line alone has survived for generations. Repeated in oral traditions across 3 different cultural groups. A king who could not fall in battle, but fell, quietly, in every other way a human being can. Here is the part of the story no one fully agrees on. Because Zorath's death, if it was a death, has 3 versions. The first says he was lured into a river by enemy scouts who had learned about his weakness to running water. That the current weakened him. That he sank. And the river, it is said, ran a strange dark color for 3 days afterward. The second version says he simply walked into the iron hills one evening and did not come back. That Ìpàdé, the house of rock, took him home when his work was finished. The third version, the one the elders prefer, says he did not die at all. That the Ogiri, true to their agreement, carried his wounds until there were none left. That somewhere inside the iron hills of what is now Central West Africa, a king is still sitting, still waiting, still listening. And that on certain nights, when the harmattan stops and every flame goes perfectly still, you can hear it. That low, resonant hum. Like the earth is still keeping its promise. Now here is what I want you to sit with. Whether Zorath was a real man, a mythological figure, or something woven between both. The tradition that preserved him believed something very specific. That power has a price. That strength and loneliness are not opposites, sometimes they are the same thing. That the earth remembers those who make an agreement with it. And perhaps the deepest question this story asked is not whether Zorath could survive a spear. It's this. What are you willing to carry, in exchange for what you want to become? Ancient African traditions were not just stories about gods and warriors. They were instruction manuals for what it cost to be extraordinary. So let me ask you this. Do you believe there are people alive today who carry ancient covenants they don't fully understand? Gifts that came with terms. Strengths that came with isolation. Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever felt like the earth or your ancestors were watching you, guiding you, I genuinely want to hear your story. Drop it below. In my next video, I'm going to tell you about the women the Stone King tradition never talks about. The ones who made the covenants before the kings did. The ones the elders called the first carriers. And what they were carrying is something that has never fully left this earth. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Because some truths are only told once.